Hello, everyone. It's David Neagle. Welcome to another episode of the Successful Mind podcast. Today, my guest is Benton Crane. He is the CEO of Harmon Brothers, an amazing ad agency, probably responsible for, is it the number one running ad, or how would you say that? Tell me how to say that.
I think our Squatty Potty ad has been called the greatest viral ad in the history of the internet.
There you go. The Squatty Potty ad.
Yeah, we've had a whole bunch of different campaigns that have been, equally or even more successful, but that's one of the ones that people love to talk about because a pooping unicorn, pooping rainbow ice cream, I guess it's conversation worthy.
Right, exactly. So, and your company, Harmon Brothers, basically, you're an ad agency.
Yep.
And you develop marketing campaigns for who? Who's your ideal client out there?
The ideal client is any company that has a real solution to a real problem, and it's one that we get passionately excited about. So for example, we helped Purple mattresses launch from zero to, I think I saw, they're over $1 billion company now.
Is that right?
And what was so exciting about that for us was that, in the world of sleep, you basically hadn't really had any real innovation for like 100 years. It's foam or springs, take your pick, hard or soft, take your pick. And Purple invented this, technology that relieves pressure points like a soft mattress, but it supports your spinal alignment like a hard mattress. And so it's kind of this no compromise sleep experience, this new technology that was totally new. And when they introduced it to us, they gave us a sample mattress, and we were just so blown away by it. And we got so excited about it that we were able to kind of take that passion and channel it into the advertising. And so, other examples, we did Poo-Pourri, we did Chapbooks, Fiber Fix, which is it's a repair wrap that's 100 times stronger than duct tape. And just really cool products that are solving, real problems for real people. And we tell the world about those, and we tell the world in really fun and exciting ways that catches your attention and gets you talking about it and gets you sharing it with your friends. And that's what we've built our reputation on, and that's what we're really good at.
Is it fair to say that you're the real mastermind behind the growth of Harmon Brothers itself?
Me personally?
Yeah, you personally. That's the word on the street anyway.
I would never claim to be the mastermind. I think, I'm surrounded by such a talented team and such amazing partners. And so, would I claim to be part of the mastermind?
Yeah.
Of course. But would I claim to be the mastermind? No, I would never make that claim.
Yeah, I get it. But you've got a real name for yourself out there in the marketing and advertising world.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's well deserved. What was your journey though? Like, how did you get to be the CEO of this brilliant company that is, making so many other companies extremely successful? And for those of you that are listening to this, it's a really interesting thing because marketing and advertising, in a lot of ways, it gets a bad rap. But on the flip side of that, these are the companies and the people behind messages that actually make them work, so that companies stand out above the competition. And it takes real talent to be able to do that, and a solid understanding of the consumer's mindset, how they work, what the demographic is, matching the message and the mission to individuals that really want something, but they may not know it's there. They may not even know that they want it in many cases. So how did you get into that? What was your journey?
Early on, I was blessed to have a really unique experience that not many people get. And that kind of set me on a path. So I was a junior in high school, and I remember coming home from school one day, and I was frustrated, and I vented to my dad, and I said, "Dad, this just feels like such a waste of time. I feel like high school is just daycare for the teenagers. They're just, we're just doing time." And I fully expected my dad to give me kind of the standard answer that I would get from a high school counselor or anything else, and tell me to hang in there and make the best of it, and
Yeah.
study hard and whatnot. And instead, he just looked at me. He's like, "So you got a problem with it? Do something about it." And I was like, "Huh?" And he's like, "You don't like it? Leave. Go figure out something to do
Really?
with your life." And that was not the response that I was expecting to get from my dad. But it got me thinking, and I started thinking, what am I passionate about? What do I love? And at the time, I was just obsessed with cars. I just loved cars. I loved fixing them. I loved, buying them and selling them. That was just my passion. And so I actually dropped out of high school and just devoted myself fully to studying cars and how to fix them, how to work on them. And
What year is this? What year is this?
let's see, junior year of high school. This would have been about 99 or 2000, I think.
99, 2000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, and I ended up studying at the local trade school, and I got to go to these automotive repair competitions, and I discovered I had this really unique talent, and I won at the school, and then they sent me to the state to compete, at the whole state of Utah, and I won there. And so they sent me to Kansas City to compete at the national level, and I ended up taking second place in the nation. And I got all of these scholarship offers, and I got, there were thousands of dollars of tools were given to me and all this stuff. And it was all kind of a result of two things. One, I was sinking my time and my focus into something that I was passionate about and that I just loved. And then two, my dad had kind of given me permission to think different and to act different, and not to, just do the status quo and just, do what you're told, so to speak. And the irony of it is that, I dropped out of high school. I'm not even a high school graduate, but later I developed a love for economics, and I ended up going back and studying, and I got a 4-year degree at Brigham Young University in economics.
Yeah.
But once again, it was just me chasing a passion and a field of study that just lit me up so that I could just pour myself into it. And then kind of the next step in my career was I ended up in Washington, D.C., working in the Intel community. My background in economics and data analytics and stuff took me out there. And that was a phenomenal springboard for my career that eventually landed me with my partners, the Harmon Brothers, because they had kind of this creative genius that they needed to marry to data analytics. And so I was able to bring the data analytics expertise to the equation, and we created this kind of this really unique marriage where we take amazing creative ideas and then we test them using data and analyze what works and what doesn't work. And so we let the data feed the creative process, and the creative process feed the data, and it becomes this amazing virtuous cycle that the more we repeat the cycle, the stronger our creative gets, and the stronger that our ad campaigns get. And so, when people look at our track record and they see, just company after company after company that we've just helped them grow by millions or tens of millions of dollars, or in some cases even hundreds of millions of dollars, and they see that repeat over and over and over again, sometimes they're tempted to think like, wow, these guys, have gotten really lucky, or they have the golden touch, or whatever it is. But if you actually peel back the curtain and look behind the scenes, there's a methodology there that makes it all very predictable. And as long as we follow the methodology and our best practices of creating and testing, creating and testing, creating and testing over and over and over again, you know, we can't guarantee success for our clients, but boy, we can sure give them a really, really strong shot at success and give them a high hit rate, so to speak.
Yeah. So let me back up for a little bit, because this is a really interesting story. You didn't expect that kind of an answer from your father to do something about it, right?
Not at all. I was fully expecting him to, you know, be cool, stay in school, you know, you don't want to end up flipping burgers at McDonald's. You know, I was expecting those type of responses. And he is the one who opened my mind and my eyes to the possibility that I could do something else. And now that I'm a father, I actually have additional context and appreciation for what he did. Because remember, like, I didn't become an instant success. I was out working on cars. Like, I was a high school dropout car mechanic, which, you know, by all perspectives, that's not a fast track to success, right? That's kind of, you know, most people would consider that throwing away your life or throwing away your talent or whatever. And so from my dad's perspective, I imagine that his peers and, you know, the other parents and stuff were looking at that going like, man, you know, that Crane kid, he sure is a waste of life or whatever.
Yeah. What are you doing? Right.
Yeah. And so I'm so appreciative that my dad just he didn't care what anyone thought, you know, he didn't care what the neighbors said about me. You know,
what was his background? What did your dad do?
He grew up as a farmer. He farmed his whole life. He got married, farmed through the 80s. He was still farming when I was a little kid. And then farming in the 80s kind of turned into you got to grow big and industrialize or you go bust. It was kind of like the end of family farms, you know, happened in the 80s and 90s. And so he saw that coming. And so he left farming to go to college. And so that's when we moved to Utah so that he could go to college at BYU.
Okay.
So that he could get a degree and kind of start the next phase of his career. And honestly, he never found, you know, career success, so to speak. He always struggled in his career. You know, we grew up, you know, relatively poor. We didn't have much. And, you know, that's part of what drove me and part of what, you know, gave me the opportunities to push and to learn and to have, you know, all that motivation. So yeah, it was a unique experience, and my dad had a unique perspective, and boy, did it bless my life, and I sure am appreciative of it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you don't hear, there's so many people that I talk to that just did not have the support, you know, whatever it was. And whatever that insight was that your dad had, I mean, I think that's absolutely fantastic, because it had to know that he was in support of something that traditionally people would have been against, you know. I mean, you just think, I quit high school too in my junior year, and the comments that were made, you're going to ruin your life, you're never going to get anywhere, you have to at least have a high school education. And that's in the 80s, right? I mean, you needed more than a high school education. And it's even today, when people talk to me and they find out that I quit high school, they're like, well, how did you do anything if you quit high school? Right. You know, it's I don't think people actually make the connection there, but it was the same as you were saying. It was almost like they were just babysitting a bunch of people. But where did you, when you made that transition from Intel into the Harmon Brothers, what was the expertise that you were bringing to the table? Like, tell me the story, how you got involved.
Yeah. So I was a data analyst and a statistician. So spreadsheets were kind of my jam. You know, I lived in spreadsheets, lived in the numbers. That's what my life and my passion had been for several years. And the brothers, so three brothers, Neil, Daniel, and Jeff, they had kind of pioneered YouTube marketing at a company called Orabrush. For context, Google had just bought YouTube.
Okay.
And prior to Google buying it, YouTube was just a video sharing site. So, you would go there to find, funny cat videos or whatever.
Right.
But no businesses were on YouTube. There were no ads on YouTube. That wasn't a thing yet. And so Google bought it. I don't remember what the year was. I want to say 2009 or something like that. And immediately Google put a plan in place to turn it into an advertising platform. And at the exact same time, the brothers were at Orabrush trying to turn a tongue cleaner that scrapes your tongue and gets rid of bad breath. They were trying to figure out a way to advertise this. The inventor of it, a guy named Dr. Bob, had invented it. He spent $40,000 on an infomercial and sold like eight units or something like that. Just a total catastrophe. And so Dr. Bob took it to the local marketing class at BYU to see if he could get some insight from the marketing students on what they would do.
Uh-huh.
And so there was a group of marketing students who took it on as a student project. And at the end of the semester, they came back and they reported in front of Dr. Bob and in front of the whole class that they had done research and they had come to the conclusion that only 8% of people online said they would be willing to buy a product like the Orabrush. And they said, so we think you should scrap the project and get rid of it. Well, Jeff Harmon's sitting at the back of the classroom hearing this. Now this is last day of class, last marketing class. He's just about to graduate, but he's hearing this. And he just raises his hand. He goes, 8% is millions and millions of people. Why don't you just focus on those 8%? And Dr. Bob looks over and sees him. He goes, can I talk to you after class? and so Dr. Bob meets up with Jeff after class, and Dr. Bob's out of money. He can't even pay Jeff. And so he trades him an old used motorcycle. He says, I'll give you this motorcycle if you'll come help me market this. And so Jeff builds an ad campaign for YouTube. And that had really not been done before. It was completely brand new. And so when YouTube saw it, they actually reached out and said, hey, we're trying to build an ad platform here. We see what you're doing. Tell us what you need. And Jeff was like, well, look, I really need more time to tell my story. Can you make the ad skippable? And so now when you see those, when you go to watch a YouTube video and you see the 5 seconds play at the beginning and then the skip ad button comes up, that came from this collaboration with YouTube and Orabrush, where Jeff is saying, I need 2.5 minutes to tell the story of the Orabrush, make it skippable, and the people who want to see it will, and the people who don't want to see it can skip it. And looking back, it's been over a decade since that happened, but I genuinely believe that one single thing was probably one of the biggest innovations in the whole industry of advertising, because it shifted the power from the advertisers to the viewers. And it forces advertisers to actually make stuff that viewers want to watch and that viewers get to opt into. And so, fast forward today, now we're seeing most of our ads in Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that, but it's still the same concept where if an ad doesn't capture my attention, I can scroll right past it. And so as an advertiser, I still have to think in terms of, I have 2 seconds to capture your attention and give you something that you want to watch and something that you want to engage with. And if I fail to do that, then I'm not serving your needs as a viewer. And so in my opinion, that was a huge innovation.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds pretty amazing, actually. So then where did it go from there then? So then what happened?
Yeah, so eventually Orabrush ended up getting acquired by Dentech, some big dental company or whatever.
Yeah.
And the three brothers were tackling their next project, which was Poo-Pourri. And that was when they needed a data analyst. They needed a geek like myself. And I'm actually a cousin of the brothers. So we're lifelong friends. We grew up together.
So that's the connection there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jeff and I were college roommates. Like we go way back. And so we had always stayed in touch throughout all this. And so when Poo-Pourri happened, Jeff and I were talking on the phone, and he was telling me about the project and telling me what he needed. And I just had this moment where I knew that what they were embarking on was going to be huge. And I knew that it was the future, and I knew I wanted to be a part of it. And so I just told him, I was like, man, let me join up with you. Let me help. I'll move my family across the country, from Washington, D.C. back to Utah. Just let me be a part of this. And he was actually a little taken back. He was like, whoa, really? Because I had a promising career and everything out there.
Did he realize how big it was going to be at that point?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'd love to ask him that. Jeff's a pretty visionary guy, so
Yeah.
I imagine he probably had a better vision than most of what was coming. But at the same time, when you're like in the middle of it, when you're in the weeds, sometimes it's hard to wrap your head around just how big, the implications of something can be.
For sure.
So, but I'm not sure on that.
What was your vision for your life at that point?
That's a good question. So there's a lot of people who really, ascribe to the idea of like a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan or whatever. And I see value in that, but to be honest with you, my approach to life and my approach to my career has been more about focusing on preparedness and flexibility. And what I mean by that is, if I'm learning and challenging myself and constantly preparing for whatever the future brings, as long as I keep flexibility built into my life, when new opportunities present themselves to me, I can seize those moments. And that manifests itself in really small ways, like, trying, to avoid debt, because, debt can tie you down to a specific job or a specific location or whatever. And trying to make sure that I'm structuring my life so that, when an opportunity arises, I can seize it. And this was just one of those moments. It was one of those opportunities where the opportunity presented itself to me, and I saw the opportunity there, and I didn't know what all it entailed. I didn't know what the future would look like, but I knew it was an opportunity. And so I seized it. And of course, now looking back in hindsight, that was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my career. And it really put me on a springboard, and it's put me in a position to have a big impact on the world and have a big impact on our clients. It's been really fun.
Yeah, for sure. My mentor used to say that if a person focuses on basically your ideology of being prepared for whatever is coming, that it has a way of attracting exactly the right opportunities that person needs, whether they're conscious or not. And then he would say, and for the person that doesn't do it, the greatest opportunity in the world will only let that person look foolish if they're actually not prepared for it. So it's a really interesting thing, because the way that I see it is that it's like pre-opening doors for yourself before you even get there.
Or before you even know what the doors are.
Before you know what the doors are. What was like, the ideas of what you guys did were very innovative. What sparked the innovation and the thinking to make these things so successful? Because I think everybody would love to, when I talk to people that are marketers, and they're always looking at what are the trends, what are other people doing. It's kind of like the Super Bowl mentality, right? Everybody wants to see what those commercials are going to be like from a cutting edge type of perspective. Were you guys thinking that you were innovating, that you were creating something new, or what was the kind of the mindset behind that especially for the Poo-Pourri thing?
I don't remember us at the time asking ourselves like, you know, hey, let's make sure we innovate, or let's make sure we do something different or whatever. Instead, we just said, man, what would I want to watch? What would I want to see? You know, how would I tell myself this story?
Right.
And I think that's kind of the mentality that we went into it with. And we knew that we were already starting to, you know, this was, God, when was this? This was 2013. So, you know, smartphones had been around for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Facebook was starting to mature. And we were already seeing in ourselves that the way we acted, you know, when we're, you know, perusing our Facebook feed or whatever, that our attention spans were just so small. And so we were, as advertisers, we were thinking, you know, through that lens of how do you talk to somebody who has such a short attention span? How do you give them something that they actually want to watch? How do you give them something that they want to talk about and share with their friends? And so that was kind of the starting point. And then the innovation just kind of was almost a byproduct of trying to give the viewer what the viewer wanted. And we knew that when it comes to shareability, humor is by far the most shareable thing in the world, right? You know, you might get some shareability out of, you know, a fear-based message. You see those, you know, I guess especially during pandemic, we've seen all sorts of fear-based messages. But even fear-based messages, you usually think twice before you share them, because you're like, you know, there's probably about half of my audience who's going to appreciate this fear-based message. And then there's probably the other half who it's really going to kind of like, you know, rain on their day. And I don't want to be that guy, right? Same thing with like political stuff, controversial stuff. It's always kind of like, it's this divide. And so you always think twice about sharing that stuff. But humor is like the universal, it's just safe to share because you're adding to people's days. You know, you're putting a smile on people's faces. Doesn't matter what their, you know, political viewpoints are or whatever. Just make them smile. You know, make them have a good day. And so knowing that, you know, we figured that was the best place, you know, to start with building content that people want to watch and want to consume. And so we went and collaborated with some really, really talented comedians. And, you know, there was kind of this theory that, hey, it'll be easier to teach a comedian how to sell something than it is to teach a marketer how to be funny. And so we went and found world-class comedians and had them come in and help us build out these concepts and scripts and worlds and ideas and all this stuff. And then we kind of built the sales structure around those really fun, you know, funny concepts.
So you absolutely knew that the comedy aspect of it was more shareable than most anything else at that time. It wasn't something that you found out afterwards. That was part of the intelligent piece that went into it. We know this, so then let's go out and find these comedians.
Well, we knew it at a gut level. We didn't have the data to back it up like we do now.
Yeah.
But at the time, we were kind of inherently thinking, how do we give people something that they will actually want to watch and that they will enjoy watching?
Well, it was definitely funny. There's no question about it. So what did tell me more about the comedians. What role did they play? Well, how did they collaborate on this?
So all of our scripts and campaigns are always a collaborative effort. You know, if you go and look at the credits on our various campaigns, you'll never see just a single writer writing on one. Our creative process is actually one in which we bring multiple writers to the table and we ask them to first work in a vacuum where they each individually come up with their own idea, their own concept, their own script. And that's so we don't get groupthink out of the gate. We want really unique and individual ideas. And then we bring them together and we read each idea and each concept. And we're doing this in a group now. And as a group, we start discussing, okay, what's working, what's not working, what's strong about this idea, what's weak about this idea, what are the pros, what are the cons, et cetera, et cetera. And eventually we hone in on one concept. We say, okay, this concept is the one upon which we want to build. And then we turn all of the writers loose on that one particular concept. So now they're working as a group, whereas previously they had kind of been working in a vacuum. And so as a group, they then begin to refine and massage and evolve and develop, you know, that initial script or concept. And so, you know, and that applies to all of our campaigns. So if you look back at, you know, Squatty Potty, for instance, you know, Jeff Harmon was the one who came up with the initial idea of ice cream as a metaphor for poop.
Yeah.
And then he's asking himself, okay, well, where can the ice cream or this metaphorical poop come from? It can't come from anything real, because if you go to something real, it automatically takes you back into the world of gross. And so we had to come up with this mythical, you know, creature, which in that case was the unicorn.
Unicorn.
But then our minds were thinking of the pooping unicorn as like this giant unicorn horse on the back of a food truck on the corner of like a New York City, you know, street vendor type setup. And that's where our minds were thinking. But then Dave Vance, one of our comedians and writers, came in, and he brought in this idea of, well, let's put it in this medieval fairy tale land where we combine it with this prince. And so, you know, you kind of take this idea that got seeded by Jeff, and then Dave kind of took it to the next level. And then Daniel came in and said, no, the unicorn can't look like this giant horse. That's gross. It has to look like this cute little creature. And when you actually look at the unicorn, it looks more like a gerbil than a horse.
Yeah.
But it brought everything kind of into this like cute, safe, you know, fairy tale land where we can now talk about really hard things like poop.
Right.
And it doesn't come across as crass or off-putting because we've created all the visuals that are so safe. And it took kind of all those different contributions to come together, and all of our campaigns are that way.
How much time or effort went into figuring out who the demographic was for that product ahead of time?
Well, in the case of Squatty Potty, you know, the company already had demographic data from their customers.
Oh, okay.
But it was all about like 55 plus, you know, people who are suffering from, you know, chronic constipation and chronic hemorrhoids and, you know, tough situations like that. So, you know, it was like all these 55 plus people were buying it, and then they were hiding it in the master bathroom where, you know, the neighbors and their friends would never see it because, you know, they didn't want to have to talk about it. Right. And so part of our goal was to say, well, how do we expand it beyond just the 55 plus crowd? How do we actually get other people thinking about it? Because guess what? Other people need it. You know, everyone poops, and everyone is going to start to have these chronic problems if they don't fix their toilet posture, which I know this is a gross subject. Like just talking about it here is kind of like awkward for me. But that's why we had that, like, you know, the safe mystical fairy tale land,
right?
So that we could talk about hard things in a way that wasn't off-putting.
Well, you know, the interesting thing about it was that when it came out, it made that topic suitable for conversation, like in a lunch boardroom meeting or something. People started having this conversation around, well, it makes a difference in how you sit. And if you think about it, before we had toilets, how did people squat? And here's what it actually does. Here's and nobody ever tells you that these problems are real, and this can change the whole thing, and about colon cancer and all different kinds of topics were then, it was like you gave people permission to talk about something that nobody ever wanted to talk about before because it's gross. So I don't think people really understand how much something like a marketing ad or advertising can literally open things up for discussion beyond just the idea of buying something
Oh
or
yeah.
selling product, but actually really sparking thinking about the way people actually live their lives. I mean, it innovates in a way where a person literally could change their life because you made it comfortable to be able to have that conversation.
Yeah, I remember when we were in the process, it's funny you bring this up because I remember us having a conversation where we actually said, if we can get it to where people can talk about this around the dinner table, then we've done it right. And I remember we launched it, I want to say we launched in it was like August of 2013 or sometime around then.
Mm-hmm.
And then in October at Halloween, I remember I was seeing unicorn costumes pop up all over the place. And then I started seeing the poop emoji start to come into vogue. And then I started seeing, the Squatty Potty showed up in an episode of, what was the sitcom called? Like Megastore or something like that. And then Bryan Cranston bought one for a gift for, I can't remember who it was, mother-in-law or wife or someone. And we just kept seeing kind of this snowball effect where it was just becoming more and more and more mainstream. And just the other day, my kids came home and they had these little lollipops, these little suckers that were rainbow poop suckers, you know, they were, and Play-Doh has this unit where, it's this plastic unicorn that can poop out Play-Doh that,
Right.
and just like thing after thing after thing like that. And so to your point, what started out as just an ad campaign for Squatty Potty has kind of, it's worked its way into so many different elements of our culture, and it's made, the conversation around poop, it's now much, much safer and more socially acceptable than it's ever been.
What has it done? What has it done for Harmon Brothers as a company?
Well, to be honest with you, we didn't even know we were going to be an ad agency.
Oh, really?
So here's the timeline. So we did Poo-Pourri. That was in 2013. I think I screwed up. I told you Squatty Potty was 2013. That came later. That was 2015.
Okay.
Poo-Pourri was 2013. After Poo-Pourri, we shifted our focus and we launched a video streaming platform called VidAngel.
Okay.
And we ran with that for about a year, maybe just over a year. And it was pretty tough in the beginning. We were having a hard time getting it off the ground, and we were starting to run low on cash and runway. And so Daniel and I said, well, let's go get some side work. Let's go get some side jobs to keep the lights on, keep food on the table. And we got a couple of side projects, and one of them ended up being Squatty Potty. And Squatty Potty, like Poo-Pourri, was just so wildly successful and just blew up so huge that Daniel and I were like, well, we're kind of onto something here. Why don't we just put our full focus into continuing this and building this out as an agency? And Neil and Jeff, they stayed focused on building VidAngel. And it was kind of funny because I remember having a conversation with them. They were like, one of them's bound to fail. So, you guys work on that. We'll work on this. And then, whichever one doesn't fail, we'll focus around that. And, we've been blessed and fortunate enough that neither failed. And, both are, both have turned out to be successful businesses. And so that was how we ended up saying, let's be an agency. And Daniel and I have since put our full-time focus into building this.
That's awesome. Like, congratulations to all of you guys. Like, it's really amazing. What, before we started recording, we were talking about that you have something called Harmon Brothers University. Tell me about that. What does that do for people?
Yeah. So After, boy, I would say it really hit after Squatty Potty, but then it hit even harder after Purple Mattresses, where like we had driven so much success for these companies that people really started kind of banging our door down.
Okay.
And I want to say it's something to the tune of like 80 companies per month reach out to us seeking our help. And obviously, small team, we're a pretty small group. We can't help all of those people. Right. And we started asking ourselves, like, can we help more of these? How can we provide more value? How can we give back more? And so we ended up starting to build out Harmon Brothers University, which is a series of online courses that teaches entrepreneurs how to market like we market. And it starts at the beginning with how do you market on a shoestring budget? How do you get the best results possible for the least amount of money? And then as you start to see the results build up, it starts to focus on other things like, okay, how do you start to integrate humor so that you can make your ads more shareable and more fun? And eventually it gets into how do you build a brand that, people can know and love and trust and remember. Yeah. And so Harmon, if any of your listeners are interested in checking it out, they can check it out at harmonbrothersuniversity.com. They'll find kind of the different options there. And depending on where they're at in their business, they can probably find something that could really, really help in their marketing efforts.
When does a person or a company know that they have enough budget to hire you? What do they want to hire you? Where do you start with somebody?
So kind of what we do is we start with a process that we call the marketing audit.
Okay.
And that we actually offer for free. So, companies who reach out to us, we take a look at them and we see if they're a good fit for our marketing audit. And if they are, then what we do is we do a marketing audit where we take a look at what they're doing and identify what works, what doesn't work, where are they strong, where are they weak, what do they need, what's kind of the next step that they need to do. Mm-hmm. And the ones that we get excited about and the ones that we kind of feel some passion around, like, hey, these people are doing something really cool here, we want to help them out. We put them into what we call our hero incubator. And that's where we say, look, this company is probably still too small to be able to afford a big old, Squatty Potty or Poo-Pourri or Purple type campaign. Right. A massive campaign like that costs several $100,000. Most companies don't start ready for that. Some do, some, sure. Some come to us and they're in the perfect position and that's awesome. But most of the others are at a much earlier stage. And so we say, okay, how do we put them in this hero incubator where we can grow them into that big hero campaign and help them take all the steps that are necessary? And so in that hero incubator, well, we're not always doing all their advertising for them. Mm-hmm. We're giving them the guidance and the hand-holding and the direction to help them along that path. And so, your question about when companies can afford that, that's very accessible and very affordable. So even pretty new companies can access our help at that phase. Companies who are ready for the big hero campaign, they generally need to have a few $1 million in sales kind of under their belt already. So they're really ready for the big growth.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really awesome. If you were going to give somebody advice, we have something that we toss around a little bit. It's called it's the Successful Mind podcast. So it's kind of like, what is your successful mind tip when it comes to marketing and advertising for, say, the medium to small business owner? How do they need to be thinking about this as far as the importance level and from a growth, frankly, from a growth perspective with their business? And the reason I'm asking, I find that there's two areas that especially young entrepreneurs really avoid, and one of them is marketing, the other one is sales. Probably because number one, they're not good at it. The other one is they don't like the rejection. They don't understand how much of marketing and advertising is testing. Like you talked about that a little bit when we first started talking about all the testing that's actually involved in getting those numbers. But but how should a person think about it so that they can wrap their mind around it as something that needs to be functionally progressive and have a really well thought out plan put into it?
Let's see. If I was to boil it down to one tip,
Yeah.
I think I would say talk to people how you like to be talked to. Think of your marketing and your sales as giving somebody your story in a way that they want, to consume it. Give them something that they want. And so obviously your message isn't going to be wanted by everyone.
For
But
sure.
if you can identify who does want it and who can benefit from it and who will appreciate it, and then speak to that person, speak to them like a person, speak to them how you would want to be spoken to. I think that, that one mindset will go so far in all your different marketing efforts. Doesn't matter if you're focused on writing an email or a landing page or a video script or whatever. If you have that mindset, it will serve you well.
Are you there was a saying that I was taught learning marketing many years ago, 25 years ago, and it might have been Dan Kennedy that said it. I don't know who originated, but they were talking about what entering into the conversation that your potential customers already having in their mind. So they have a desire or a need for a product or a service, and there's already some dialogue that they have going on in their own thinking process. And part of good marketing is to be able to enter that conversation in their mind. Do you agree with that? Is that a philosophy that you agree with?
I think to a degree, where I might build on that a little bit or possibly push back on that a little bit, is that there are many instances, Squatty Potty, for example, where people are facing a real problem that they don't know they're facing.
Mm-hmm.
People weren't already having that conversation in their head around, man, this toilet experience is a really lousy experience. They weren't thinking that, right?
Yeah.
It just was what it was. And it was only when we brought it to their attention and helped them see and feel the pain that then was their mind open to this idea that, whoa, maybe I do need a solution to this problem.
So
And
you're actually creating the conversation in their mind at that point. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. That's fascinating, because I think you're right. I think there's a lot of people that have issues. They probably don't know that there's options. So it's just accepting the problem the way that it is. And then there is no dialogue actually going on.
Yep. But there are a lot of other examples that do fall into, what that Dan Kennedy quote, Lumi deodorant, for instance, that's another one of our, smash hit campaigns. It's a natural deodorant that actually works. And prior to Lumi, the trade-off that people faced was, I can choose a natural deodorant that is either going to give me rashes in my armpits or it's not going to work. I'll just stink. Or I can go back to the chemical stuff.
Okay.
And so anyone who already thought about, natural, organic, non-chemical, anyone who had already tried their hand, tried products in that space, they felt the problem. They knew the problem. And so when we come along with the Lumi ad, that's more like what you were saying, where we just entered right into that conversation of, man, natural deodorant really sucks because it's either going to burn your pits or it's not going to work. And oh, guess what? Here's a solution.
Last question. With everything that's going on in the world currently, what is that doing for marketing? Are you seeing marketing and advertising changing in any way, fundamentally? Because just in the way that people are thinking, the uncertainty that's been created in the world, is there been any talk about the way that you're approaching it, or things that need to be changed because it's caused a major shift or not? Like, I don't know. I don't even know. That's why I'm asking the question.
Couple of things I've noticed. The first one is that it feels like people are taking opposite approaches when it comes to marketing.
Okay.
People are either taking a wait and see approach, so kind of taking their foot off the gas, or they're taking an aggressive approach of like, let's lean in. We don't know what the future holds, but let's try to seize it. Let's be aggressive here. And I haven't seen a whole lot of middle ground. It's kind of like one or the other. It's like you're either pulling back or you're leaning in. And we're seeing the companies and the entrepreneurs who are leaning in, many of them are finding real success in this, even in this kind of pandemic type environment. And I think a few things are driving that success. One is, I believe more so than ever, people are hungry for positive, uplifting messages. People are hungry to open up Facebook and have a smile put on their face instead of just more dreary, more dread, more blah. And then I think the second piece of it is that the huge brands of the world, who normally, normally they spend $100 million per year on ads, and now their marketing budget got slashed down to $60 million per year. That's freed up $40 million worth of inventory for other entrepreneurs to come in and take advantage of. And the fact that that's kind of happening across the board, huge advertisers all across the board are pulling back on their ads. It's making advertising so much more accessible and so much more affordable for the ones who are really seizing the moment.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That really is fascinating. Well, it's definitely a time for change. And I could see how, you were talking about humor. Even if a person approached something a little bit different to get out of the crazy conversations that are happening and grab somebody's attention by being lighter or uplifting in a way, even if you are selling deodorant or Squatty Potty or whatever, it can almost actually come as a relief to a person to see something that's actually more positive or just fun, just plain fun, to be able to hear something. So I think that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Where are you going next? Where's the company going next? Where are you going next?
Well, our mission is to share better stories, and ads just happen to be one format through which we can share stories. And when I say share better stories, we want to share stories that make the world a better place.
For sure.
So one of our upcoming projects, one that's already underway and that we're working on, is we're actually we're making an animated TV series for kids that educates kids on principles of economics and principles of freedom and prosperity and happiness. And it's based on the best-selling book series, The Tuttle Twins.
Oh, nice.
So we'll be launching the pilot to that I'm guessing probably January of next year. So that's a big project that we're working on. So people who follow
where will it be launched? Do you know?
So it's going to be launched on its own streaming app, which is it's a fairly new concept, but it was proven out by the show The Chosen.
Okay.
So there's the show called The Chosen. So just open up your app store on Apple or on Android or whatever, download the Chosen app, and you'll be able to watch the series there.
Cool.
Phenomenally successful series about the people who surrounded Jesus Christ. And it's on track to be the highest rated series in the history of IMDb.
Wow.
I think they're coming up on 50 million views. It's been viewed in every country in the world except North Korea. It's winning awards, 98% on IMDb, super high ratings on Rotten Tomato. I can't remember what it is, but anyways, long story short, it launched on its own app. And we're following in that same pattern with our series. We're following the same model that The Chosen used.
That's awesome, Ben. Congratulations. I wish you guys all the best.
Thank
Where
you.
can people get a hold of you, find out more about you and Harmon Brothers?
LinkedIn is the best place to stay in touch with me.
Okay.
So follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn. And then, of course, to stay in touch with Harmon Brothers, we're active on all the major platforms. So, follow us on the platform of your choice and stay in touch with us.
Okay.
And, reach out if you need anything. We're happy to help where we can.
And they can find out about Harmon Brothers University there also?
Yep, harmonbrothersuniversity.com.
That's great. That's great. Ben, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you, David.
You're welcome. Take care of yourself.
All right, you too.